Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio. Johnny Hamburger, mental curator. Let's get right back into it. I'm going to talk about Jurassic Park. Sorry, Jurassic World here in a second. But at first I want to bring up something that I realized today that kind of hit me like a lightning bolt of stupidity. And that is, there's a new movie coming out called Isle of Dogs. ISLE space OF space DOGS. Isle of Dogs, like Island of Dogs. It only dawned on me today, because I'm a dope, that Isle of Dogs is a play on word. Isle of Dogs. I love dogs. I love dogs. That only just occurred to me. I've heard that Isle of Dogs is supposed to be some sort of propaganda piece about cultural appropriation. God only knows. Everything has to be identity politics. This is not a political show. Just let a movie be a movie. And if the movie does have political overtones, so be it. Why does everything have to be one way or the other? Why? It's amazing. Okay. Sidetracked. And yes, I will get to Jurassic World in this segment. There are works of fiction that have been written or produced to be specific political narratives. 1984. Is that political? Or is that more of kind of dystopian future type thing? 1984 is one of my favorite books. I've read it several times. Another one of my favorite books I read back in 7th or 8th grade. We had this program at my school called Accelerated Reader, which every 6 weeks you had to read a certain number, or you had to reach a certain number of points per week or per grading period that you had to meet, and you could read one book like worth, maybe let's say it was 9 points total that you needed to accrue over the 6 weeks. So you could either read one super complicated book like War and Peace or something, and that was worth all 9 points, or you could read a bunch of small books. You could read 9 books that were worth 1 point each. Anyways, I didn't do so great with Accelerated Reader just because I get so bored. Because I had ADD, and oh my gosh, kind of a side note but related, the Scarlet Letter is torture, especially when you're in middle school. Maybe I should go back and read it now, but Scarlet Letter gives me anxiety just thinking about how much I hated the Scarlet Letter. Anyways, back on track. The book I read in 7th or 8th grade, my English teacher hated me. She always thought I was cheating or something, even though my grades were terrible. Anytime I would get a good grade on something, she's like, "You cheated on this." Like, nope. I just didn't care about the other stuff. It pissed her off so much that I did good in her class, that I was so good in English class, that I would get straight B's in her class. She hated that. She hated me. She was a disciplinarian. She hated my guts. Not going to say her last name. Any one of my friends listening right now who went to NCA with me, Northeast Christian Academy, knows exactly who I'm talking about. But anyways, she was the one in charge of the Accelerated Reader program. She's at least the one who checked to make sure and verify that, you got all the points in the test. You had to go take this standard test after each book. And she wrote the questions to these tests. And she wrote the most obscure... I'm getting like fired up about this. She would write in the questions that were so obscure, and I'm talking, she would say, in chapter 3, and you can't have the book when you're taking this test. You have to read the book, and then you're tested on how much you retained of the book. But she would write questions. In the middle of the 3rd chapter, the boy on the side of the street that so-and-so walks past, what color was his hair? What's the point? Why does that matter? That question is deliberately put in there to to flunk people like me. That has nothing to do with the story. That has nothing to do with the plot of the book. Is nothing. It was this completely auxiliary little flake of writing that the author put in there just to set a scene. Has nothing to do with the plot. Has nothing to do with the story. Anyways, my favorite book that I read in 7th or 8th grade was Animal Farm. Animal Farm is a very political book. Very, very political book. And it's okay because on the outset, from the get-go, that book was presented as political, not even satire, just political fiction. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the bad type of socialism. By the way, another side note. When you hear people railing against socialism, they're thinking of Venezuelan socialism. They're not thinking about diplomatic socialism like they have in Nordic countries. I'm not getting into the whole thing. I'm not disparaging capitalism or our American democracy. We are a very young country. The model works, but we are very young. We have our growing pains. I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Don't email me saying Johnny Hemberger on Geek Therapy Radio is a socialist. There's bad socialism, Venezuela, and there's socialism that works for this area of the world. That's diplomatic socialism. One of them's bad. One of them works for that group of people. Would diplomatic socialism work in the United States? That's worth more debate. A debate we won't get into on this show. I'm just saying, don't throw capitalism out just yet. Don't throw our democracy out. Don't throw our republic out yet. We're still so young. Anyways, Animal Farm was a very political piece, and it was okay that it was so political because it set out from the get-go that it's political. And once again, I lied. That I was going to get into Jurassic Park in this segment. I promise to God that in segment 3, I'm going to get into Jurassic Park. If you're listening to the podcast, you should already know that because I'm pretty good in the descriptions about what I'm talking about in each segment. So if you're just listening to this blindly, on the radio, driving around Saturday night, I apologize. Next segment, I promise I'm getting into Jurassic Park because I have some juicy opinions about that as well. In a nutshell, I'm excited and disappointed. Anyways, we'll get into that. So anyways, I took this test on Animal Farm, and it asked the whole thing was most of the questions were so super obscure that I almost said her name, that my English teacher put in there to punish me. I legit think that she reworded the questions because anytime I went in to take the test, she was in there typing away at the computer. I guarantee you she changed the questions. That is speculation. That is dramatic speculation. So I read Animal Farm and I retained quite a bit of it. Now, if you ask me now specifics, it's been 20 years since I've read it. I won't remember everything, every detail. But back then, I knew it really well. I knew the plot points. I knew what it was saying. I knew the quote-unquote propaganda it was pushing. I knew everything about the book in those regards. I knew everything about the book that made it important, that made it formative, that made it relevant. Knowing how much hay one of the pigs ate in chapter 3, sentence whatever, why? That's not important. Animal Farm. I need to reread Animal Farm. All these books that I've mentioned so far, 1984, Animal Farm, you got to go back and read. Another one I need to go back and read that I just blanked out on, now I remembered, is All Creatures Great and Small. I need to read that again. All Creatures Great and Small, I believe believe that had political overtones, and I may be understating it. I may be completely brain farting. So, the 3 books I talked about here. Mostly I talked about Animal Farm, I talked about 1984, and All Creatures Great and Small. By the way, on the way out of this segment, 1984, they say that we have 1984 right now. 1984 wasn't supposed to be nonfiction. We bought 1984. We bought into this. It was not the government forcing anything on us. We bought it from Apple, Amazon, and Google. We'll be right back. More Geek Therapy Radio.